Let me speak carefully about this, because this is where so many people are pulled into fear. When I was deep in occult practice, we were taught that sudden ear ringing meant activity. We were told it was a signal, a transmission, a spiritual conversation happening around us. If someone's left ear rang, it meant one thing. If the right ear rang, it meant another. Everything had a coded meaning. And once you believe that, every small physical sensation becomes a message. I remember the first time my ear rang sharply during a gathering. It was sudden, high-pitched, and intense. The leader looked at me and said, "You see, you're sensitive. You can detect movement in the spiritual realm." That moment changed how I interpreted my body forever. A completely normal human sensation became proof of something supernatural. But here is what I did not understand then, and what I need you to understand now. The human body makes noise, nerves fire, muscles twitch, blood pressure shifts, stress spikes. The inner ear is incredibly sensitive. Sudden ear ringing, what medical science calls tinnitus, can happen from fatigue, anxiety, dehydration, loud noise exposure, or even simple stress. It is common, extremely common. But when someone is taught to interpret normal biology as spiritual activity, fear attaches itself to the sound. And fear is powerful. Inside occult systems, suggestion is everything. If you can convince someone that a normal bodily function is supernatural, you gain control over their interpretation of reality. From that point forward, they start scanning for meaning in every sensation. That scanning builds anxiety. Anxiety heightens awareness. Heightened awareness makes sensations feel stronger. And suddenly, the ringing feels mystical when it is biological. So before we go any further, I need to separate truth from narrative. Not every unexplained sensation is spiritual. Not every ringing ear is a warning. And not every sudden sound is a sign. Sometimes it's just your body being human. And if you don't understand that, fear will fill in the blanks. After that first experience, I began noticing ear ringing more often. Or at least, I thought I did. In reality, it had probably always happened occasionally, like it does for most people. But now my mind was trained to watch for it. And that is where the real trap begins. When you are told that a normal physical sensation is a spiritual signal, your brain becomes hyper alert. You start monitoring your body constantly. Every small shift becomes significant. Every ring becomes a message. And the more you monitor, the more you notice. This is something we understood very well in occult environments. We didn't need to create supernatural manifestations every day. We only needed to plant interpretation. Once someone accepts the interpretation, their own nervous system does the rest. Think about this carefully. If I tell you that whenever your ear rings, someone is speaking about you in the spirit realm, you will start connecting the ringing to people in your life. You will begin wondering who is thinking about you, who is targeting you, who is jealous, who is praying against you. The sound hasn't changed, but the meaning has, and meaning creates emotion. Emotion creates belief. Belief creates behavior. Suddenly, a harmless bodily sensation is producing suspicion, tension, and spiritual paranoia. You start reacting to people differently. You start assuming opposition. You start praying from panic instead of peace. Inside the occult, that is considered a success. Because once fear attaches to a neutral event, your mind begins doing the work for the system. You reinforce the belief yourself. You become your own amplifier. I need you to hear this clearly. Fear magnifies sensation. When you are anxious, your nervous system is already heightened. Blood flow changes. Muscles tighten. Your inner ear becomes more sensitive. Tinnitus episodes can feel louder or longer simply because you are stressed. So the very fear created by the interpretation makes the ringing feel more intense, which then confirms the interpretation. That is a loop, a psychological loop. And loops are difficult to break when someone believes they are spiritual revelations. Winning this battle begins by breaking that loop. When your ear rings, instead of asking, "Who is attacking me?" ask, "Am I tired? Am I stressed? Have I been around loud noise? Am I dehydrated?" That shift alone dismantles half the fear, because clarity is stronger than suggestion. And once suggestion loses power, the sound becomes what it always was, just a sound. Let me take you deeper, because this is where most people misunderstand what's really happening. In the occult, we didn't rely on constant, visible manifestations. We relied on suggestion. Suggestion is subtle, but it is incredibly powerful. If you repeat something enough times, especially in an emotional or spiritual setting, the mind begins to accept it as truth. We would tell people, when your ear rings, it means you're being discussed in the spirit realm. We would say it calmly. Confidently, here is what I had to confront when I left that world. It wasn't the sensations that controlled me, it was the interpretation. The ringing itself was never the power. The meaning I assigned to it was. When I stepped away from occult thinking, the hardest battle was retraining my mind. Because even after I stopped practicing, my body still did normal human things. My ear would ring suddenly, and for a split second, the old narrative would try to rise up. Something is happening. Someone is targeting you. Pay attention. But here's the truth I had to learn: thoughts are not facts. Just because a thought appears does not mean it is revelation. Just because a sensation occurs does not mean it carries a hidden message. The brain is designed to look for patterns. It wants meaning. It hates randomness. So it fills in gaps automatically. That automatic meaning making process is what occult systems exploit. Once you understand that, you regain power. When my ear rang after I left, instead of reacting, I began observing, I would pause and breathe. I would ask practical questions. Am I tired? Did I sleep poorly? Have I been stressed? Was I exposed to loud sound earlier? Sometimes it lasted a few seconds. Sometimes it faded quickly. Nothing supernatural followed. No attack, no manifestation, no coded message, just silence. And that silence began to teach me something important. Most fear survives on anticipation. If you expect something bad to follow the ringing, your body stays tense. Your mind scans for evidence. You connect unrelated events to confirm the fear. But if you refuse to attach a story to the sound, it remains neutral. Neutrality is powerful. Inside occult thinking, everything must mean something. Nothing is random. Nothing is biological. Nothing is coincidence. That worldview creates constant tension because you are always decoding. Breaking free means accepting that the human body is complex, imperfect, and sometimes noisy. It also means understanding that tinnitus is medically recognized. It affects millions of people worldwide. It can be triggered by stress, anxiety, earwax buildup, blood pressure shifts, medication, or simple fatigue. None of that is mystical. None of that requires spiritual interpretation. When you remove the dramatic meaning, the fear weakens. And when fear weakens, the battle shifts from mystical panic to practical awareness. That shift alone changes everything. Winning spiritual battles does not mean assigning spiritual causes to every physical sensation. Sometimes winning means refusing to let fear hijack your mind in the first place. Because once interpretation loses its grip, the signal loses its power, and you realize it was never a signal at all. Let me tell you something most former occult practitioners will never admit publicly. Fear was our strongest weapon. Not spells, not rituals, not symbols. Fear. Because when a person is afraid, they become suggestible. When they are anxious, they start searching for explanations. And when you give them a spiritual explanation for a normal human experience, you hook them emotionally. Sudden ear ringing was useful because it's unpredictable. It happens without warning. And unpredictability creates vulnerability. The mind instantly asks, why did that just happen? If someone already believes in hidden forces, they will fill in the blank with something dramatic. And here's the dangerous part. Once fear attaches to a sensation, the body reacts. Your heart rate increases, your breathing changes, muscles tighten. That physical response reinforces the belief that something significant just occurred. The fear creates the confirmation. I remember people coming to us saying, my ear rang and right after that something went wrong in my house. They were convinced the ringing was the warning. But what they didn't see was how many times their ears rang and nothing happened. The mind filters for patterns that support the belief and ignores the rest. That's not demonic activity. That's human psychology. But when you live inside an occult framework, you interpret normal psychological processes as spiritual warfare. Leaving that mindset required humility. I had to accept that many of the signs I thought were supernatural were simply normal bodily experiences combined with expectation. That realization was uncomfortable because it meant I had given power to something that never truly had it. Fear thrives on mystery. It grows when things are undefined. When you shine practical understanding on it, it shrinks. If your ear rings suddenly, the real battle is not against an unseen force. The real battle is against the immediate rush of catastrophic thinking. It's against the voice that says, something bad is coming. It's against the urge to spiral. Winning that moment, choosing calm over panic, is more powerful than any ritual. And here's something important: stress itself can trigger ear ringing. Anxiety can intensify it. So if you believe the ringing is a threat, your fear can actually make it happen more often. That cycle keeps you trapped. But when you refuse to dramatize it, when you treat it as a neutral body signal, the cycle weakens. You regain control not by fighting invisible enemies, but by mastering your interpretation and emotional response. That is the real battlefield. And once you understand that, the ringing loses its intimidation. It becomes just a sound, not a prophecy. The most dangerous thing about occult thinking is not the rituals. It is the surrender of authority. When I was deep in that world, I believed that external forces were constantly influencing my life. Signs were everywhere. Messages were hidden in ordinary events. My body was treated like a receiver for spiritual signals instead of what it actually is: a biological system designed to respond to stress, sound, fatigue, and environment. That belief quietly trained me to distrust myself. CHPTER, CVN, THE 2 PC. If you've stayed with me this far, then here is the truth I wish someone had told me years ago. There is no secret signal hidden in your ear ringing. There is no coded warning riding on that sudden high pitched sound. There is no invisible counsel announcing your name when it happens. The secret is far less dramatic and far more freeing. Your body makes noise sometimes. That's it. And I know that might sound simple, almost disappointing, especially if you've been taught to interpret every unusual sensation as a spiritual alert. But peace begins when you stop turning normal human experiences into supernatural emergencies. When I left the occult mindset, I had to retrain my brain. The first time my ear rang, after I walked away from that world, I felt the old reflex rise up inside me. What does this mean? Who is speaking? Is something coming? But instead of reacting, I paused. I took a breath, and I asked a different question. What is the most ordinary explanation for this? Maybe I was tired. Maybe I had been around loud noise. Maybe my stress levels were high. And do you know what happened when I stopped assigning meaning to it? Nothing. No attack followed. No hidden event unfolded. No spiritual consequence appeared, just silence returning to normal. That was the moment I realized something powerful. The battle had never been external. It had always been about interpretation. When you stop feeding fear, it starves. When you stop searching for hidden messages, your mind becomes quieter. When you stop dramatizing normal sensations, your nervous system relaxes. Peace is not found in decoding signs. Peace is found in stability. If you experience persistent or troubling ear ringing, the wise step is not spiritual panic, it's practical care. Talk to a medical professional. Check your stress levels. Protect your hearing. Those actions are empowering because they're grounded in reality. You don't need a ritual. You don't need a counter spell. You don't need to rebuke a sound. You need clarity. And clarity dismantles fear. The occult mindset survives by convincing you that you are surrounded by hidden threats. But the truth is far less dramatic. Most of what you experience is simply part of being human. When you accept that, something shifts. You stop living on high alert. You stop scanning for danger in every sensation. You stop reacting to harmless signals as if they are emergencies. And that is freedom. If your ear rings tonight, let it be just that, a sound. Let it pass without assigning it a story. Let your mind stay steady. Let your body relax. The real power is not in fighting invisible enemies. The real power is in refusing to create them. That is how you win every so called spiritual battle. Not by fear, not by superstition, but by truth, calm, and grounded understanding.